Welcome to Night Empire. Tonight, we leave behind the famous empires that fill history books and travel instead to places that most people have never heard of. When people think about the ancient world, they usually imagine great powers. They think of ancient Egypt, they think of Rome, they think of Greece, perhaps they think of China or Persia. These civilizations dominate our understanding of history. Their monuments still stand. Their stories are taught in schools. Their rulers remain famous thousands of years later. But history is much larger than the handful of civilizations that most of us know. Across deserts, mountains, forests, and distant coastlines, countless kingdoms once flourished. They built cities. They traded goods. They fought wars. They worshipped their gods. They raised families and dreamed about the future. For centuries, many of these kingdoms were powerful and prosperous. Some controlled important trade routes. Some possessed enormous wealth. Some rivaled the greatest empires of their age. And yet today, most people have never heard their names. Their capitals have disappeared. Their palaces have crumbled. Their stories survive only in scattered ruins, ancient inscriptions, and the quiet work of archaeologists. Tonight, we will explore these forgotten kingdoms, not through battles and dates alone, but through the lives of the people who lived there. The merchants who crossed dangerous deserts, the farmers who worked fertile fields, the sailors who followed distant coastlines, the rulers who dreamed of creating empires that would last forever, and the ordinary families who could never have imagined that their kingdoms would one day vanish from memory. Imagine standing in an ancient marketplace nearly 2,000 years ago. The air is filled with voices speaking unfamiliar languages. Caravans arrive carrying exotic goods from distant lands. Animals pull carts loaded with spices, ivory, gold, silk, and precious stones. People move through crowded streets surrounded by temples, homes, and government buildings. Everything feels alive. Everything feels permanent. No one here believes their kingdom will ever be forgotten. Yet history can be surprisingly fragile. Sometimes a kingdom disappears because of invasion. Sometimes climate change transforms fertile land into barren wilderness. Sometimes trade routes shift. Sometimes disease spreads. Sometimes powerful neighbors grow stronger. And sometimes entire civilizations simply fade away over centuries. The people living through these changes rarely understand what is happening. For them, life continues one day at a time. Children are born. Farmers plant crops. Merchants negotiate prices. Festivals are celebrated. The future still seems full of possibility. Yet somewhere beyond the horizon, forces are already beginning to reshape their world. One of the most fascinating things about forgotten kingdoms is how important many of them once were. Modern maps give us the impression that history always revolved around the civilizations we know best. But that is not true. There were periods when forgotten kingdoms controlled trade routes connecting continents. There were times when their armies inspired fear across entire regions. There were moments when travelers viewed them as centers of wealth and culture. Some possessed technologies that amazed foreign visitors. Others developed artistic traditions that still influence cultures today. Yet because their stories were not preserved as completely as those of larger empires, much of their history slowly slipped away. Imagine spending your entire life building a magnificent city. You construct temples, you create roads, you establish markets. You believe future generations will remember your achievements forever. Then centuries pass, buildings collapse. Sand covers the streets. Vegetation grows over foundations. Eventually, even the city's name is forgotten. This has happened many times throughout history. Entire civilizations have vanished beneath forests. Others disappeared beneath deserts. Some remained hidden until modern archaeologists accidentally uncovered them. When explorers first discovered certain forgotten cities, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. Massive stone structures emerged from dense vegetation. Ancient inscriptions revealed unknown rulers. Artifacts told stories that had been silent for hundreds or even thousands of years. Each discovery reminded the world that history contains far more than the civilizations we already know. And that is why forgotten kingdoms are so fascinating. They reveal how much of the past remains hidden. They remind us that fame is not permanent. Even the most successful societies can eventually disappear from memory. As we journey through these forgotten worlds, we will meet powerful rulers, wealthy merchants, skilled craftsmen, and ordinary people whose stories deserve to be remembered. We will visit kingdoms that once stood at the center of international trade, We will explore cities that dazzled ancient travelers. We will discover cultures that flourished long before modern nations existed. And along the way, we may begin to see history differently, not as a story told only by famous empires, but as a vast tapestry woven from countless civilizations, many of which have been overlooked for far too long. Tonight is only the beginning, because our first forgotten kingdom awaits, a powerful African civilization that stood beside ancient Egypt itself. A kingdom of gold, trade, warriors, and remarkable achievements. A kingdom known as Kush. And that is where our journey continues. Chapter 2, the Kingdom of Kush. As our journey through the forgotten kingdoms continues, we travel south of ancient Egypt, deep into the lands that border the Nile River. This was the Kingdom of Kush. Today, many people have never heard its name. Yet for centuries, Kush was one of the most powerful kingdoms in Africa. It was a land of rich resources, thriving trade routes, skilled warriors, and impressive cities. At times, it stood alongside Egypt as a rival. At other times, it ruled Egypt itself. But despite its remarkable history, Kush remains one of the ancient world's most overlooked civilizations. Tonight, we step into that forgotten world. Imagine standing beside the Nile nearly 3,000 years ago. The river flows quietly through the landscape. Palm trees sway gently in the warm breeze. Villages and towns stretch along the fertile riverbanks. Merchants travel with goods from distant regions. Farmers tend their fields beneath the hot African sun. Life here depends on the Nile, just as it did in Egypt. Without the river, survival would have been nearly impossible. The surrounding lands were often harsh and dry, but the Nile brought water, fertile soil, and opportunity. Because of this, communities flourished. Over time, those communities grew into a powerful kingdom. The people of Kush lived in a region known today as Sudan. Their civilization developed south of Egypt, in an area rich with natural resources. Gold was especially important. The land contained valuable gold deposits that attracted traders and rulers for centuries. This wealth helped Kush become prosperous. Gold flowed north into Egypt and beyond. Merchants carried ivory, ebony, animal skins, incense, and other valuable goods along ancient trade routes. The kingdom became a bridge connecting Central Africa with the Mediterranean world. Trade brought wealth, and wealth brought power. Yet life for ordinary people remained filled with challenges. Most families worked as farmers. Their daily routines revolved around planting and harvesting crops. They grew wheat, barley, and various fruits and vegetables. Many also raised animals such as cattle, sheep, and goats. The work was demanding. Days began early. The heat could be intense. And successful harvests depended heavily on weather and river conditions. Like many ancient societies, survival required constant effort. A poor harvest could bring hardship. A drought could threaten entire communities. Food security was never guaranteed. Even in prosperous times, life demanded patience and resilience. Yet the people of Kush adapted remarkably well. They learned how to thrive in a difficult environment. Their communities became increasingly organized. Villages expanded into towns. Towns developed into cities. One of the most important cities was Napata. Located near a sacred mountain, Napata became a center of religion and political power. Temples rose above the landscape. Priests performed ceremonies. Rulers strengthened their authority. The city became a symbol of Kushite identity. Generations of leaders governed from this region. As the kingdom grew stronger, its relationship with Egypt became increasingly important. Sometimes the two civilizations traded peacefully. Sometimes they competed. Sometimes they fought. For centuries, Egypt viewed the lands to the south as both valuable and dangerous. Military campaigns moved back and forth across the border. Control shifted repeatedly, yet Kush survived, and eventually, it achieved something extraordinary. Around the 8th century BCE, Kushite rulers expanded northward. They conquered Egypt. For a period of time, the kings of Kush ruled both kingdoms. These rulers became known as the 25th dynasty of Egypt. Imagine how remarkable that achievement was. A kingdom often overshadowed by Egypt had become powerful enough to govern one of the world's greatest civilizations. The Kushite kings embraced many Egyptian traditions. They built temples. They honored Egyptian gods. They ruled as pharaohs. Yet they also maintained their own identity and culture. Their reign demonstrated the strength and sophistication of Kush. But no empire lasts forever. New powers eventually emerged in the region. Foreign invasions created pressure. Political challenges increased. The Kushite rulers withdrew southward. Although they no longer controlled Egypt, their kingdom continued to thrive. The capital later moved to a city called Meroe. This city became famous for iron production. Skilled craftsmen produced tools and weapons that supported economic growth. Trade networks expanded even further. Merchants carried goods across vast distances. The kingdom entered another period of prosperity. Perhaps the most striking reminder of Kush today is its pyramids. Many people are surprised to learn that Sudan contains more pyramids than Egypt. The rulers of Kush built hundreds of these structures. Though smaller than Egypt's Great Pyramids, they remain impressive. Standing beneath the desert sky, they remind us of a civilization that once rivaled the greatest powers of the ancient world. Yet despite these achievements, Kush slowly faded from prominence. Trade routes changed. Political conditions shifted. New kingdoms emerged. Over time, cities declined. Buildings crumbled. The memory of Kush gradually disappeared from much of the world. For centuries, its story remained hidden. Only through archaeology and historical research has the kingdom begun to reclaim its place in history. Today, the ruins of Kush still stand quietly beside the Nile. Its temples, cities, and pyramids continue to reveal clues about a remarkable civilization. A civilization that prospered through trade. A civilization that conquered Egypt. A civilization that left behind monuments that still endure. And yet, somehow, a civilization many people have never heard of. As our journey continues, we leave the lands of Kush behind and travel further into Africa. There, another forgotten kingdom awaits. A kingdom of traders, sailors, and powerful rulers. A kingdom that connected Africa to the wider world. Chapter 3, the Kingdom of Aksum. Tonight, our journey takes us to the ancient kingdom of Aksum. Long ago, while great empires rose and fell across Europe, Asia, and Africa, Aksum quietly became one of the most influential kingdoms in the world. Yet today, many people know little about it. Its story survives in ruins, ancient inscriptions, and towering stone monuments that still stand beneath the African sky. Imagine waking before sunrise nearly 1,800 years ago. The first light of dawn spreads across the highlands of East Africa. The air is cool and fresh. Merchants prepare their goods for market. Farmers begin another day of work. Caravans gather for long journeys. Ships wait in distant ports along the Red Sea. This is Aksum at the height of its power. Located in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, Aksum occupied a strategic position between Africa, Arabia, and the wider world. Its location allowed it to control important trade routes. Goods flowed through the kingdom from many different regions. Ivory arrived from Central Africa. Gold traveled through merchant networks. Spices came from distant lands. Silk and luxury products moved between continents. The people of Aksum became skilled traders. Their merchants connected cultures separated by vast distances. As trade increased, wealth followed. Cities expanded. Markets flourished. Rulers gained influence. Over time, Aksum grew into a powerful kingdom. For ordinary people, however, life remained centered on daily responsibilities. Most families depended on agriculture. Farmers cultivated crops on fertile highland soils. They grew grains, fruits, and vegetables. Many households kept livestock. Cattle, sheep, and goats were valuable possessions. Life required constant effort. Fields needed attention. Animals required care. Food had to be produced season after season. Like people throughout the ancient world, survival depended heavily on nature. A poor harvest could create hardship. Drought could threaten entire communities. Yet the highlands offered advantages. The climate was often milder than many neighboring regions. Reliable rainfall helped support agriculture. These conditions contributed to the kingdom's success. As wealth increased, Aksum's rulers invested in impressive construction projects. Perhaps the most famous are the giant stone stelae. These enormous monuments still amaze visitors today. Some stand taller than modern buildings. Carved from single pieces of stone, they demonstrate extraordinary engineering skill. Creating them required careful planning and immense labor. Workers shaped massive blocks of granite. Teams transported them across difficult terrain. Then they were raised upright using techniques historians still study today. For the people who lived nearby, these monuments symbolized royal authority and achievement. They reminded everyone of the kingdom's power. Aksum's rulers also issued their own coins. This may seem ordinary today, but in the ancient world, producing coins was a sign of sophistication and influence. The coins helped facilitate trade and strengthen the kingdom's economy. Merchants could conduct business more efficiently. The kingdom became increasingly connected to international markets. Ships traveling through the Red Sea often visited Aksumite ports. Sailors carried news, ideas, and products from distant lands. This constant movement of people helped shape the kingdom's culture. Different traditions mixed together. New ideas spread across communities. Religious beliefs evolved over time. One of the most important moments in Aksum's history occurred during the 4th century. Its ruler, King Ezana, adopted Christianity. This decision transformed the kingdom. Churches were built. Religious traditions changed. Christianity became deeply rooted in the region. Remarkably, these traditions continue in Ethiopia today. Few ancient kingdoms can claim such a lasting cultural legacy. Yet even during prosperous times, ordinary life was not easy. Travel could be dangerous. Bandits threatened trade routes. Disease remained a constant risk. Medical knowledge was limited. A simple infection could become life-threatening. Life expectancy was much shorter than it is today. Most people spent their days focused on work, family, and survival. The greatness of Aksum rested upon countless ordinary individuals. Farmers grew food. Builders constructed monuments. Merchants crossed deserts and seas. Their efforts supported the kingdom's prosperity. As centuries passed, however, challenges began to appear. Trade routes gradually changed. Political rivals emerged. Economic conditions shifted. The kingdom's influence slowly weakened. The world around Aksum was changing. New powers gained control of important regions. International commerce followed different paths. As trade declined, wealth became harder to maintain. Cities lost population. Political authority weakened. The kingdom that had once connected continents gradually faded from prominence. Yet Aksum did not disappear completely. Its people endured. Its culture survived. Its religious traditions continued. And its monuments remained standing as silent witnesses to a remarkable past. Today, travelers can still visit the ancient ruins. They can stand before towering stone stelae. They can walk through landscapes where merchants once traded goods from across the known world. They can imagine a kingdom that was once considered one of the great powers of its age. Aksum reminds us that history is full of civilizations whose influence stretched far beyond what many people realize. It was a kingdom of traders, builders, sailors, and rulers. A kingdom that connected Africa to the wider world. And although many have forgotten its story, its achievements remain extraordinary. As our journey continues, we leave the highlands of Aksum behind. Ahead lies another forgotten kingdom, a kingdom famous for wealth, trade, and one of history's most important inventions. Chapter 4, The Kingdom of Lydia. Tonight, our journey takes us to a forgotten kingdom that once stood at the crossroads of continents. A kingdom of merchants, craftsmen, and wealthy rulers. A kingdom whose influence can still be felt every time we buy something today. This was Lydia. Long before modern banks, credit cards, or paper money existed, the people of Lydia introduced an innovation that would change the world forever. They created some of the first coins. But Lydia was far more than the birthplace of coinage. It was a prosperous kingdom filled with busy markets, valuable trade routes, and ambitious rulers who dreamed of greatness. Imagine standing in Western Anatolia, in what is now modern-day Turkey, nearly 2,700 years ago. The morning sun rises over rolling hills and fertile valleys. Roads connect villages and cities. Merchants travel with carts loaded with goods. Farmers work fields rich with grain and fruit. Artisans shape metal, pottery, and textiles. The kingdom feels alive with activity. At the center of this world stands Sardis, the capital city of Lydia. To ancient travelers, Sardis was a place of wealth and opportunity. Its streets bustled with traders from many different cultures. Its markets offered goods from distant lands. Its rulers controlled valuable trade routes connecting east and west. Because of its location, Lydia benefited greatly from commerce. Merchants arriving from Asia exchanged goods with traders traveling toward Europe. Ideas moved alongside products. Languages mixed together. Cultures interacted. The kingdom became both wealthy and influential. Yet for ordinary people, daily life remained demanding. Most families worked hard to survive. Farmers cultivated wheat, barley, olives, and grapes. Their days began early and often ended long after sunset. The seasons controlled much of their lives. Planting, harvesting, and caring for animals required constant attention. A poor harvest could threaten an entire family's future. Nature remained both generous and unpredictable. Despite these challenges, Lydia prospered. One reason was its access to precious metals. Nearby rivers contained deposits of gold and silver. For generations, people collected these valuable materials. Eventually, Lydian rulers discovered a revolutionary way to use them. Instead of weighing precious metal during every transaction, they began producing standardized coins. These coins carried official markings that guaranteed their value. For merchants, this made trade much easier. Transactions became faster. Trust increased. Commerce expanded. What seems ordinary to us today was an extraordinary innovation in the ancient world. The idea spread rapidly. Other civilizations adopted coinage. Soon, coins became common throughout much of the ancient world. In many ways, Lydia helped shape the future of global trade. As wealth flowed into the kingdom, its rulers gained power. Among them, one king became especially famous. His name was Croesus. Even today, his reputation survives. Ancient writers described him as incredibly wealthy. His riches became legendary. In fact, the expression rich as Croesus is still occasionally used to describe great wealth. Imagine living in a kingdom ruled by such a famous monarch. Grand buildings rose within the capital. Treasures filled royal palaces. Foreign visitors arrived seeking trade and alliances. The kingdom appeared strong and successful. Yet appearances can be deceiving. Even prosperous kingdoms face dangers. Beyond Lydia's borders, powerful empires watched carefully. Among them was Persia. At the time, the Persian Empire was expanding rapidly. Its rulers were ambitious. Its armies were formidable. As Persian power grew, Lydia faced increasing pressure. Croesus sought guidance about what to do. According to ancient stories, he consulted oracles who offered mysterious predictions. Believing success was certain, he chose war. It was a decision that would change history. The conflict that followed ended badly for Lydia. The Persians defeated Croesus. Sardis fell. The kingdom lost its independence. A civilization that had once seemed secure suddenly found itself absorbed into a larger empire. For ordinary people, these changes could be unsettling. New rulers brought new laws. Taxes might change. Military obligations could increase. Families had little control over events unfolding around them. They simply adapted as best they could. This was often the reality of ancient life. Kingdoms rose. Kingdoms fell. Ordinary people continued planting crops, raising children, and hoping for stability. Although Lydia disappeared as an independent kingdom, its legacy endured. Its innovations continued influencing future civilizations. Its coinage transformed commerce. Its wealth became legendary. Its capital remained an important city for centuries, and its story survived long after its rulers were gone. Today, the ruins of Sardis still exist. Visitors can walk among the remains of a city that once stood at the center of international trade. They can imagine merchants negotiating prices. They can picture craftsmen producing goods. They can envision travelers arriving from distant lands. Most importantly, they can remember a kingdom whose influence reached far beyond its borders. Lydia reminds us that even forgotten civilizations can leave lasting marks on human history. A simple coin may seem small, yet sometimes the smallest innovations create the greatest changes. Our journey continues. We leave behind the markets and wealth of Lydia. Ahead lies another mysterious kingdom, a kingdom of skilled horsemen, powerful rulers, and alliances that shaped the ancient Near East. Chapter 5, the Kingdom of Mitanni. We travel even further into the ancient past. Our destination is a kingdom that once stood between some of the greatest powers of the Bronze Age, a kingdom of skilled horsemen, powerful kings, and remarkable diplomacy. A kingdom that was once respected by Egypt, feared by rivals, and admired for its military strength. This was Mitanni. Today, few people have heard its name. Unlike Egypt, it left behind no giant pyramids. Unlike Rome, it built no famous empire that survived in popular memory. Yet for several centuries, Mitanni was one of the most important kingdoms in the ancient Near East. Its rulers controlled vast territories. Its armies protected valuable lands. Its diplomats negotiated with kings whose names still appear in history books. Imagine waking nearly 3,500 years ago. The sun rises over fertile plains in what is now northern Syria and parts of modern Iraq and Turkey. Villages slowly come to life. Farmers prepare their tools. Animals graze in open fields. Merchants begin their journeys. Children help families with daily tasks. Life follows familiar rhythms. Yet beyond these peaceful scenes lies a kingdom whose influence stretches across the region. The land of Mitanni was blessed with fertile soil and important trade routes. Rivers provided water for agriculture. Fields produced crops that supported growing populations. Caravans carried goods between distant cities. These advantages helped the kingdom prosper. For ordinary people, however, life remained centered on hard work. Most families depended on farming. They cultivated wheat and barley. They raised sheep, goats, and cattle. The changing seasons controlled much of their existence. A successful harvest brought security. A failed harvest brought uncertainty. Like many ancient societies, survival required constant effort and patience. But Mitanni became famous for something else: its horses. The kingdom developed an extraordinary reputation for horse breeding and chariot warfare. In the Bronze Age, chariots were among the most powerful military technologies available. A skilled chariot warrior could dominate a battlefield. Training horses required knowledge, discipline, and experience. Mitanni excelled at all three. Its horse trainers became so respected that their methods influenced neighboring civilizations. Ancient records reveal detailed instructions about caring for horses and preparing them for battle. Some historians consider these texts among the earliest training manuals in history. Imagine the sight of a Mitanni chariot force. Teams of horses race across open ground. Wooden wheels thunder over the earth. Warriors stand ready with bows and weapons. Dust rises into the air. To enemies watching from afar, the approaching chariots must have seemed both impressive and terrifying. Military strength helped Mitanni become a major regional power. Yet warfare was only one part of its success. Diplomacy was equally important. The rulers of Mitanni understood that alliances could be as valuable as armies. They negotiated with neighboring kingdoms. They exchanged gifts. They arranged royal marriages. At times, their relationships with Egypt became especially significant. Ancient letters reveal communication between Mitanni kings and Egyptian pharaohs. These messages discuss politics, trade, and family connections. Some Mitanni princesses even married Egyptian rulers. Imagine leaving your homeland to travel hundreds of miles into a foreign kingdom. For royal women, such journeys helped strengthen alliances between powerful states. These marriages created bonds that could preserve peace and encourage cooperation. For a time, this strategy worked remarkably well. Mitanni enjoyed prosperity. Its rulers maintained influence. Its people benefited from relative stability. Cities expanded. Trade increased. Agriculture flourished. The future appeared promising. But history rarely remains unchanged for long. New powers were rising nearby. Among them were the Hittites. Their kingdom grew stronger with each passing generation. Its rulers expanded their territory and challenged neighboring states. As Hittite power increased, pressure on Mitanni intensified. At the same time, internal political struggles weakened the kingdom. Rival factions competed for influence. Leadership became less stable. Enemies recognized these weaknesses and moved to take advantage of them. Gradually, Mitanni began losing territory. Military defeats reduced its strength. Political instability undermined its authority. The kingdom that had once stood among the great powers of the ancient world slowly declined. For ordinary families, these changes could be frightening. Wars disrupted trade. Armies moved through the countryside. Taxes increased. Communities faced uncertainty about the future. People who had spent their lives believing in the stability of their kingdom suddenly found themselves living through its decline. Eventually, Mitanni disappeared as an independent power. Its lands came under the control of stronger neighbors. Its rulers faded into history. Its cities gradually declined. Over the centuries, much of its story was forgotten. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, relatively few records survived. Archaeologists and historians have had to piece together its history from scattered evidence: ancient letters, broken inscriptions, fragments of forgotten cities. Each discovery reveals another small piece of the puzzle. And through these discoveries, the kingdom of Mitanni slowly emerges from the shadows of history. Today, we know that it was far more important than many people realize. It was a kingdom of skilled horse trainers, a kingdom of diplomats and warriors, a kingdom that influenced some of the most powerful civilizations of its age. And although its name is not widely remembered, its story remains fascinating. As our journey continues, we leave behind the chariots and royal courts of Mitanni. Ahead lies a kingdom shaped by the sea, a kingdom of sailors, merchants, and beautiful coastal cities, a kingdom that connected cultures across Southeast Asia, the Kingdom of Champa. Chapter 6, the Kingdom of Champa. Our journey takes us far from the deserts of Africa and the plains of the ancient Near East. We travel instead to the warm tropical coastlines of Southeast Asia, a land of dense forests, powerful rivers, busy ports, and skilled sailors. A kingdom shaped by the sea, a kingdom that prospered through trade and cultural exchange. This was Champa. Today, many people have never heard of it. Yet for more than 1,000 years, Champa stood as one of Southeast Asia's most important civilizations. Its merchants sailed across vast waters. Its rulers built magnificent temples. Its cities welcomed traders from distant lands. And its people created a rich culture that blended local traditions with influences from India and beyond. Imagine waking on the coast of Champa nearly 1,000 years ago. The morning sun rises over the South China Sea. Fishing boats drift across gentle waves. Palm trees sway in the warm breeze. The air smells of salt water and tropical vegetation. Merchants prepare goods for transport. Sailors inspect their vessels. Markets slowly come to life. For many people, the sea is not merely part of the landscape. It is the center of everyday life. The Kingdom of Champa occupied much of what is now central and southern Vietnam. Its location gave it access to important maritime trade routes. Ships traveling between China, India, and Southeast Asia often passed through its waters. This brought opportunities that many inland kingdoms could only dream of. Trade became the foundation of Champa's prosperity. Merchants arrived carrying silk, ceramics, spices, precious metals, and luxury goods. Ports bustled with activity. Different languages could be heard in crowded marketplaces. People from distant cultures met, traded, and shared ideas. The kingdom became a crossroads of the ancient world. For ordinary families, however, daily life remained focused on practical concerns. Many people worked as farmers. Rice cultivation was especially important. Fields stretched across fertile valleys and river plains. Growing rice required patience and skill. Farmers carefully managed water supplies. They planted, tended, and harvested crops according to the seasons. The work was demanding but essential. Rice fed communities and supported the kingdom's growing population. Others earned their living from the sea. Fishermen ventured into coastal waters each day. Some traveled only short distances. Others journeyed farther from shore in search of larger catches. The ocean provided food, employment, and trade opportunities. Yet it could also be dangerous. Storms sometimes appeared with little warning. Strong waves threatened boats and sailors. Life near the sea offered rewards, but it also required courage. One of the most fascinating aspects of Champa was its culture. Over centuries, the kingdom developed strong connections with India. Indian merchants, religious teachers, and travelers influenced local traditions. Hindu beliefs became especially important. Temples dedicated to Hindu gods appeared throughout the kingdom. Priests performed ceremonies. Rulers linked their authority to religious traditions. Among Champa's most impressive achievements were its temples and towers. Many were constructed using red brick. Even today, some remain standing despite centuries of weather and conflict. The most famous temple complex is known as My Sun. Nestled among green hills, these structures once served as important religious centers. Imagine approaching one of these temples 1,000 years ago. Incense fills the air. Priests perform sacred rituals. Stone carvings decorate walls. The sounds of prayers echo through the complex. For the people of Champa, these places connected the human world with the divine. As the kingdom grew wealthier, its rulers expanded their influence. Powerful kings controlled important territories. Armies defended trade routes. Naval forces protected coastal cities. For a time, Champa became one of the strongest kingdoms in the region. Yet prosperity often attracts rivals. Throughout its history, Champa faced challenges from neighboring powers. Among the most significant was Dai Viet, an expanding kingdom to the north. Periods of peace alternated with periods of warfare. Battles were fought. Territories changed hands. Cities sometimes suffered damage during conflicts. For ordinary people, war brought uncertainty. Families worried about safety. Trade could be disrupted. Fields might be abandoned. The stability people depended upon could disappear quickly. Despite these difficulties, Champa endured for centuries. Its people adapted. Its merchants continued trading. Its culture continued evolving. Generations lived their lives, believing their kingdom would endure forever. But history often follows a different path. Over time, military defeats weakened Champa. Territory was gradually lost. Political power declined. Neighboring states grew stronger. The kingdom that had once dominated important coastal regions slowly shrank. By the 15th century, much of its influence had disappeared, yet the culture of Champa did not vanish completely. Its descendants continued living in the region. Their traditions survived, their language endured, and their monuments remained standing as reminders of a remarkable civilization. Today, visitors can still explore the ancient towers and temple complexes left behind by the Cham people. These structures tell the story of a kingdom that thrived through trade, navigation, and cultural exchange. A kingdom connected to the wider world through the sea. A kingdom that flourished for centuries. And a kingdom that deserves to be remembered. As our journey continues, we leave behind the tropical shores of Champa. Ahead lies another forgotten kingdom. A kingdom of scholars, warriors, and magnificent golden treasures. A kingdom that would eventually unite an entire peninsula. The Kingdom of Silla. Chapter 7. The Kingdom of Silla. Our journey takes us to the Korean peninsula, a land of mountains, forests, rivers, and ancient kingdoms. For centuries, powerful states competed for influence across this region. They fought wars, they formed alliances, they built cities and temples, and among them, one kingdom would eventually rise above the others. This was Silla. Today, many people outside Korea know little about its history. Yet Silla was one of East Asia's most remarkable civilizations. It survived for nearly 1,000 years. It united much of the Korean peninsula. It created magnificent works of art, and it left behind treasures that continue to amaze historians and archaeologists. Imagine waking nearly 1,300 years ago in the city of Gyeongju. The morning sun shines across tiled rooftops. Temple bells echo through the air. Merchants prepare their stalls. Farmers head toward nearby fields. Government officials begin another day of work. The city is busy but orderly. At the time, Gyeongju was one of the largest and most impressive cities in East Asia. Foreign visitors often described it as wealthy and beautiful. Wide streets connected neighborhoods. Markets offered goods from distant regions. Temples and palaces reflected the kingdom's prosperity. For the people who lived there, it must have seemed like the center of the world. Yet Silla's success did not happen overnight. The kingdom began as one of several competing states on the peninsula. For generations, rulers struggled to protect their territory from rivals. Neighboring kingdoms constantly competed for land and influence. Life during these times could be uncertain. Wars disrupted communities. Resources were stretched. Families often worried about the future. But Silla's leaders proved patient and determined. Over centuries, they strengthened their government and military. They built alliances when necessary. They fought when diplomacy failed. Gradually, the kingdom grew stronger. For ordinary people, daily life revolved around work and family. Most people lived in rural communities. Agriculture formed the foundation of the economy. Farmers cultivated rice, barley, and other crops. Their days followed the rhythm of the seasons. Planting, harvesting, and caring for livestock required constant effort. Like people throughout the ancient world, they depended heavily on weather conditions. A good harvest brought stability. A poor harvest could create hardship. Yet despite these challenges, many communities prospered. Trade connected different parts of the kingdom. Craftsmen produced pottery, tools, jewelry, and textiles. Markets allowed people to exchange goods and services. Over time, wealth increased. One fascinating aspect of Silla society was its strict social hierarchy. People were born into different social classes. Their opportunities often depended on family background. This system influenced careers, marriages, government positions, and even clothing. For those born into elite families, life offered significant advantages. For others, opportunities could be limited. Such systems helped rulers maintain control, but they also created inequalities that shaped everyday life. religion played an important role in the kingdom as well. Buddhism became especially influential. Temples appeared throughout the land. Monks studied sacred texts. Pilgrims visited religious sites. For many people, Buddhism provided comfort and guidance. Its teachings influenced art, culture, and government. Some of Silla's most impressive achievements can still be seen today. The kingdom produced extraordinary works of craftsmanship. Gold crowns, jewelry, and decorative objects reveal incredible skill. Archaeologists have discovered royal tombs filled with treasures that survived for centuries beneath the earth. Imagine the moment when one of these tombs was first opened by modern researchers. Gold gleams in the light after remaining hidden for over 1,000 years. Delicate ornaments reveal the talents of ancient craftsmen. Each object tells a story about a civilization that once flourished. The rulers of Silla also invested heavily in architecture. Temples were carefully designed. Stone pagodas rose above the landscape. Religious complexes became centers of learning and worship. One famous example is Bulguksa Temple, a masterpiece of Korean architecture. These structures reflected both spiritual devotion and artistic excellence. As the kingdom grew stronger, it eventually achieved something remarkable. Through a combination of diplomacy and military success, Silla unified much of the Korean peninsula. For the first time, large areas came under a single government. This achievement transformed the region. Trade increased. Cultural exchange expanded. Political stability improved. The kingdom entered a golden age. For many people, life became more secure than it had been during earlier centuries of conflict. Yet even successful kingdoms faced challenges. As time passed, political struggles emerged. Powerful nobles competed for influence. Economic difficulties increased. Local leaders gained more independence. The government found it harder to maintain control. Gradually, the kingdom weakened. The stability that had once seemed permanent began to fade. For ordinary families, these changes created uncertainty. Communities adapted as best they could. But the kingdom's power continued to decline. Eventually, Silla gave way to new political forces. Its long history as an independent kingdom came to an end, yet its legacy endured. Its culture influenced future generations. Its artistic achievements inspired later civilizations. Its temples and treasures survived, and its story remained an important part of Korean history. Today, visitors to Gyeongju can still explore ancient tombs, temples, and historical sites. They can walk through landscapes once ruled by Silla kings. They can admire treasures created more than 1,000 years ago. And they can remember a kingdom that transformed an entire peninsula. A kingdom of warriors, scholars, craftsmen, and dreamers. A kingdom whose influence can still be felt today. As our journey continues, we leave behind the mountains and temples of Silla. Ahead lies another forgotten civilization. A kingdom built from stone. A kingdom famous for its wealth, trade, and mysterious ruins. The Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe. Chapter 8. Great Zimbabwe. Our journey takes us to southern Africa, a land of rolling grasslands, granite hills, and ancient trade routes. Here, hidden among the landscape, stand the remains of one of Africa's most remarkable civilizations, a civilization that built enormous stone structures without mortar, a civilization that controlled valuable trade networks, a civilization that became wealthy through gold and commerce. This was Great Zimbabwe. Today, many people have never heard of it. Yet centuries ago, it was the center of a powerful kingdom that connected Africa to the wider world. Its rulers governed prosperous communities. Its merchants traded with distant lands. Its builders created monuments that continue to inspire wonder today. Imagine waking nearly 700 years ago near the city of Great Zimbabwe. The first rays of sunlight illuminate massive stone walls rising above the surrounding landscape. Birds call from nearby trees. Smoke drifts upward from cooking fires. Farmers prepare for another day of work. Herders guide cattle across open fields. Merchants organize goods for trade. The city slowly comes alive. For the people who lived here, these stone walls were an ordinary part of daily life. For modern visitors, they remain extraordinary. The Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe flourished between the 11th and 15th centuries. At its height, it was one of the most important political and economic centers in southern Africa. Its location allowed it to control valuable trade routes, connecting the interior of the continent to coastal markets. Goods moved across vast distances. Merchants carried gold, ivory, copper, and animal products. In return, imported goods arrived from distant regions: Chinese ceramics, glass beads, fine textiles, luxury items from lands many local people would never see. These trade connections brought wealth and opportunity. But for ordinary families, daily life still revolved around agriculture and livestock. Most people worked the land. They cultivated crops such as sorghum and millet. Fields required careful attention throughout the year. The success of each harvest depended on rainfall and favorable conditions. Like farming communities everywhere, people understood that nature could be both generous and unpredictable. Cattle played a particularly important role in society. They provided food, labor, and wealth. Owning large herds was often a sign of status and prosperity. Families measured success not only by the size of their harvests, but also by the number of cattle they possessed. The animals were central to both economic and social life. As the kingdom prospered, its rulers gained influence. The city of Great Zimbabwe expanded. Thousands of people lived within and around the settlement. Stone walls enclosed important areas. Elite families occupied prestigious locations. Political leaders governed from impressive complexes. The most famous structure is known today as the Great Enclosure. Its walls rise several meters high and stretch around a large area. What makes these structures remarkable is the way they were built. The builders carefully stacked granite blocks without using mortar. Each stone was shaped and positioned with extraordinary precision. Even after centuries, many sections remain standing. Imagine the effort required to create such monuments. Workers gathered stone. Builders shaped and transported materials. Construction continued year after year. The finished structures demonstrated both skill and organization. They reflected the kingdom's wealth and authority. For generations, these walls watched over daily life. Children grew up in their shadows. Merchants passed through nearby markets. Rulers made important decisions within their boundaries. The city became a symbol of power throughout the region. One of the most fascinating aspects of Great Zimbabwe is how connected it was to the wider world. Although separated by great distances from Asia and the Middle East, the kingdom participated in international trade networks. Goods traveled from the African interior to ports along the Indian Ocean. From there, ships carried products to distant lands. The people of Great Zimbabwe were not isolated. They were active participants in a global trading system that existed long before modern transportation. Yet prosperity did not last forever. Like many forgotten kingdoms, Great Zimbabwe eventually faced challenges. Environmental pressures may have affected agriculture. Growing populations placed demands on local resources. Trade patterns shifted. Political authority weakened. Historians continue to debate the exact reasons for its decline. What is clear is that the city gradually lost importance. People moved elsewhere. New centers of power emerged. The once thriving kingdom slowly faded. For ordinary families, these changes would have been difficult. Communities adapted to new circumstances. Trade opportunities changed. Economic conditions shifted. People who had known prosperity faced uncertainty about the future. Over time, the city was abandoned. Its buildings remained. Its walls endured. But the civilization that created them disappeared from prominence. Centuries later, when outsiders encountered the ruins, many struggled to believe that local African societies had built them. Some even invented false theories about foreign builders. Modern archaeology has proven otherwise. Great Zimbabwe was created by the ancestors of the local people who lived in the region. It stands as a powerful reminder of Africa's rich and sophisticated history. Today, the ruins remain one of the continent's most important archaeological sites. Visitors can walk among the ancient stone walls. They can imagine bustling markets, powerful rulers, and skilled builders. They can reflect on a kingdom that once controlled wealth, trade, and influence across a vast region. Great Zimbabwe reminds us that history is far larger than the stories most often told. It reminds us that remarkable civilizations can be forgotten. And it reminds us that even silent ruins still have stories to share. As our journey continues, we leave behind the stone walls of Great Zimbabwe. Ahead lies another fascinating kingdom, a kingdom of merchants, caravans, and desert trade routes. A kingdom that transformed a desert oasis into one of the ancient world's richest cities. The Kingdom of Palmyra. End of part 8. Chapter 9. Palmyra. The Desert Kingdom. Our journey takes us into the heart of the Syrian desert, a vast landscape of sand, rocky plains, and endless horizons. At first glance, it seems like an unlikely place for a great city to flourish. Water is scarce, the climate is harsh, travel can be dangerous. Yet for centuries, one extraordinary kingdom transformed this challenging environment into a center of wealth, culture, and international trade. This was Palmyra, a desert kingdom whose merchants connected east and west. A kingdom that became rich by welcoming travelers from across the ancient world. And a kingdom whose story remains one of history's most fascinating examples of ambition and resilience. Imagine waking nearly 1,800 years ago in the city of Palmyra. The morning sun rises over elegant stone buildings. Palm trees sway around precious water sources. Caravans of camels rest after long journeys. Merchants prepare their goods. Craftsmen open their workshops. The city slowly fills with activity. Despite being surrounded by desert, Palmyra feels vibrant and prosperous. For travelers crossing the harsh landscape, it must have seemed almost magical. The secret to Palmyra's success was its location. The city stood along important trade routes connecting the Roman Empire with Persia, Arabia, India, and even distant China. Merchants carrying valuable goods often stopped there to rest, trade, and replenish supplies. Silk arrived from the east. Spices traveled across deserts. Jewelry, perfumes, precious stones, and luxury products passed through its markets. Every caravan brought opportunity. Every traveler brought new ideas. Over time, Palmyra grew rich from this constant movement of commerce. For ordinary people, life revolved around the city's trading economy. Some worked as merchants. Others cared for camels and livestock. Many were craftsmen who produced goods for local markets. Builders, laborers, and traders all played important roles in supporting the city's prosperity. Unlike farming communities that depended heavily on harvests, Palmyra relied largely on trade. Its success depended on maintaining connections with distant lands. This created opportunities, but also risks. If trade routes changed, the city's fortunes could change as well. One of the most remarkable features of Palmyra was its diversity. People from many cultures passed through the city. Different languages could be heard in its streets. Different religious traditions existed side by side. Merchants from distant regions exchanged not only goods, but also ideas. The city became a meeting place for civilizations. This cultural blending shaped Palmyra's identity. Its architecture reflected influences from multiple worlds. Greek styles mixed with Roman traditions. Local customs blended with foreign ideas. The result was a city unlike any other. Visitors often described it as beautiful and impressive. Grand colonnades lined important streets. Temples towered above public spaces. Markets buzzed with activity. Public buildings demonstrated the wealth and confidence of the kingdom. For those living there, Palmyra may have seemed destined to prosper forever. Yet history rarely allows prosperity to remain unchallenged. Palmyra existed between powerful empires. To the west stood Rome. To the east stood Persia. Both possessed vast armies and enormous resources. Maintaining independence between such rivals required skillful leadership. For many years, Palmyra managed this balancing act successfully. Its rulers cultivated relationships with larger powers while protecting local interests. The city benefited from its position as a bridge between worlds. Then came one of the most famous figures in Palmyra's history, a woman whose name still survives nearly 2,000 years later, Queen Zenobia. Zenobia was intelligent, ambitious, and determined. When political circumstances placed her in a position of authority, she expanded Palmyra's influence dramatically. Under her leadership, the kingdom challenged Roman power. Armies captured territories across the eastern Mediterranean. For a brief moment, Palmyra seemed capable of becoming a major empire. Imagine the excitement of those years. Citizens watched their kingdom grow stronger. Merchants benefited from expanding influence. Soldiers achieved victories. The future appeared full of possibility. Yet challenging Rome was a dangerous gamble. The Roman Empire eventually responded with overwhelming force. Military campaigns pushed eastward. Palmyra's armies were defeated. Zenobia was captured. The dream of an independent empire came to an end. For ordinary people, the consequences were severe. Conflict disrupted trade. Economic activity declined. Political stability disappeared. The city that had once flourished through commerce suddenly faced uncertainty. Although Palmyra continued to exist after these events, it never fully recovered its former importance. Trade routes gradually shifted. Other cities gained influence. The desert kingdom slowly declined. Generations passed. Buildings weathered beneath the sun. The bustling markets grew quieter. The great city that had once connected continents became a shadow of its former self. Yet its legacy endured. The ruins of Palmyra remained among the most spectacular archaeological sites in the ancient world. Towering columns stretched across the desert. Temples and monuments testified to centuries of prosperity and achievement. They reminded visitors that even in the harshest environments, human determination can create extraordinary things. Today, Palmyra stands as a symbol of both greatness and fragility, a kingdom built through trade, a city enriched by cultural exchange, a civilization that flourished between powerful empires, and a reminder that even the most prosperous places can eventually fade into history. As our journey through forgotten kingdoms nears its conclusion, one final chapter remains, a chapter that asks an important question. Why do some civilizations become famous while others are forgotten? And what can these lost kingdoms teach us about the rise and fall of human history? That is where our journey ends. Chapter 10. Why Kingdoms Are Forgotten. We arrive at the final chapter of our journey through forgotten kingdoms. Over the course of our travels, we have visited powerful civilizations that once shaped the ancient world. We explored Kush, whose rulers conquered Egypt. We visited Aksum, a kingdom connected to distant continents through trade. We walked through the markets of Lydia. We rode alongside the horsemen of Mitanni. We sailed the coasts of Champa. We admired the temples of Silla. We stood among the stone walls of Great Zimbabwe. And we crossed the desert roads of Palmyra. Each kingdom was remarkable. Each kingdom achieved things that seemed destined to be remembered forever. Yet today, most people know little about them. This raises an interesting question. Why are some kingdoms remembered while others are forgotten? Imagine living in one of these civilizations at the height of its power. The streets are crowded, markets are thriving, temples and palaces rise above the city. Merchants travel from distant lands. The future appears bright. You would probably assume your kingdom would be remembered forever. Most people throughout history likely felt the same way. Very few civilizations expect to disappear. Very few people imagine that future generations might forget their names. Yet history can be surprisingly selective. Some civilizations remain famous for thousands of years. Others slowly fade from memory. One reason is survival. History depends on evidence. The more records a civilization leaves behind, the more likely it is to be remembered. Ancient Egypt carved inscriptions into stone. The Romans produced countless written documents. Chinese dynasties carefully preserved historical records. Because so much evidence survived, historians have been able to reconstruct their stories. But many forgotten kingdoms were not so fortunate. Wars destroyed cities. Libraries burned. Documents decayed. Entire archives disappeared. Without records, history becomes difficult to preserve. Another reason is geography. Some ancient cities remained continuously inhabited for centuries. People rebuilt them, protected them, and preserved their stories. Others were abandoned. Deserts swallowed settlements. Forests covered ruins. Earthquakes damaged monuments. Over time, nature erased visible traces of the past. Imagine a magnificent city standing empty for hundreds of years. Roofs collapse. Walls crumble. Plants grow through streets. Eventually, few people even remember where the city once stood. This happened more often than we might think. Trade also played an important role. Many kingdoms became wealthy because they controlled valuable trade routes. As long as merchants passed through their territories, prosperity continued. But trade routes are never permanent. New roads emerge. Political boundaries change. New technologies alter transportation. When trade shifted elsewhere, some kingdoms lost the very foundation of their success. Their economies weakened. Their populations declined. Their influence faded. Power itself is often temporary. History is filled with empires that appeared unstoppable. Yet every empire eventually faced challenges. Some were conquered. Some collapsed from internal conflicts. Some struggled with economic problems. Others faced environmental changes they could not overcome. The people living through these events rarely understood the full picture. For them, life continued one day at a time. Families raised children. Farmers harvested crops. Merchants sold goods. Ordinary people focused on immediate concerns rather than the fate of entire civilizations. And perhaps that is one of history's most important lessons. Great kingdoms are built by ordinary people. When we study history, we often focus on rulers and battles. We remember kings, queens, and military victories. But behind every civilization stood millions of individuals. Farmers who produced food, builders who constructed monuments, sailors who crossed dangerous seas, merchants who connected distant cultures, parents who cared for their families. Their names may be forgotten, yet their efforts made everything possible. Without them, no kingdom could survive. The forgotten kingdoms we explored remind us that history is much larger than the stories we usually hear. The ancient world was filled with civilizations that achieved remarkable things. Some left behind towering monuments, others transformed trade, some influenced religion and culture. Others connected distant regions through commerce and diplomacy. Even when their names faded, their contributions continued shaping the world. In many ways, these forgotten kingdoms are not truly forgotten at all. Their influence survives around us. Ideas spread, technologies endure, traditions continue, cultures evolve. The people may be gone, but traces of their achievements remain. Archaeologists continue uncovering new discoveries every year. Ancient cities emerge from beneath forests. Artifacts reveal lost stories. New evidence helps historians better understand civilizations once overlooked. With every discovery, forgotten kingdoms regain a small piece of their place in history. And perhaps that is why studying them feels so rewarding. It reminds us that the past is far richer and more complex than we often imagine. For every famous empire, there are many others waiting to be explored. For every well-known ruler, there are countless untold stories. History is not a single road. It is a vast network of paths stretching across continents and centuries. Some paths are brightly illuminated. Others remain hidden in shadow. Tonight, we have followed some of those forgotten paths. We have visited kingdoms that once flourished, kingdoms that dreamed of lasting forever, kingdoms whose people laughed, worked, traded, worshipped, and hoped for the future just as we do today. And although many of their names faded with time, their stories still matter. Because every civilization, remembered or forgotten, helped shape the world we inherited. As our journey comes to an end, the ruins grow quiet, the markets close, the caravans disappear beyond the horizon, the temples stand beneath the stars, and the forgotten kingdoms of history slowly drift back into the silence from which they came. Thank you for joining this journey through the lost civilizations of the ancient world. And until our next adventure, may your sleep be peaceful and your dreams full of history.